and welcome to Unexpected Productions, Fact or Fiction. I was kind of enjoying that music, Jason. You're out there in your home, give it up for Jason, our musical improviser. That's his music. It was reminding me of oh, nice, yes. If like Sierra had ever made an Indiana Jones video game, I feel like that would have been the theme. So welcome. Fact or Fiction is a storytelling show, and we're hosted by Unexpected Productions. Normally, when I do a show, you'd be coming down to Pike Place Market to see us, going through the market, seeing some fish be thrown, tripping if you're wearing heels on the cobblestones, trying to get past the gum wall without touching any of the gum, and we'd say hi to you in your seat. Tonight, we'll say hi to you in your home or wherever you are. And that's kind of exciting. We get to reach to you from around the world. We get to go into the storytellers' homes and kind of try to peer around them and look at their homes. At least that's what I do. So I hope that's not creepy. I invite you to do it either way. We have for you 6 storytellers tonight. There's going to be 6 stories. 3 people are going to be telling true stories. 3 people are going to be working together to improvise 3 stories. Those are our fiction. And the theme tonight is Big Trouble. Big Trouble. So let us know in the chat room if you have any good getting into Big Trouble stories, because I love to read along with those. And shout out to Funny Godmother, our CM tonight. Thank you. And thanks to all of you out there. I've been enjoying chat already. So I'm going to bring out some of your storytellers and bring out your improvising storytellers first. So let me introduce Ari.
Hi.
There we go. Let me introduce Greg, I think. And there he is. Uh-oh. And
Yeah.
let's hear it for Liz. You can see a little bit of Greg ceiling. Awesome. So you're improvising storytellers. You're going to work together tonight to create stories in the theme of Big Trouble. You can't plan ahead, though, because I'm going to throw challenges at you each time. So I think you're ready. I think we got this. So thanks for being here. I'm going to send you away into the backstage area and bring out our storytellers telling true stories tonight. So let's bring out Leah. Leah Engel.
Hello.
There we go. Hello, Leah. Let's bring out Kathleen Jenkins.
Hey.
Nice. And let's bring out Rich Hawking.
That's me.
Welcome, Rich. It's your second time telling a true story, I think, isn't it? Nice.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. And now we're having you judge these stories, and you'll be giving them points 1 through 5, not the true stories, the improvised stories, because we improvisers will try to get away with anything. So I'm going to encourage you to, judge them harshly. Give them some. Don't give them all 4s or 5s, or we'll end up with 3, close to 15s. And you're gonna have categories. So Leah, we're gonna have you judge. There's gonna be challenges for these stories. You tonight are 1 through 5 gonna judge, did they meet the challenge? Or did they get so wrapped up in their story, did they forget that they were actually supposed to follow some rules or something for their story? Kathleen, you're gonna judge the story itself. Just, did you have a good time? Did you enjoy the story? Whatever you like. Maybe you want to do some Joseph Campbell, like rigorous textual analysis of the stories, or maybe you just want to see if you enjoy it. We leave that to you. And Rich, you are going to judge the theme, which is Big Trouble. We're going to find out, did they really tell, not just was a challenge about Big Trouble, but was their story they told, was that also about Big Trouble?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you guys got this, right? Awesome. Well, stay out here. I'm going to bring everybody out now, because I always like to start the show just talking about Big Trouble. And my first question is, who got in a lot of trouble as a kid and who did not?
I got in a lot of trouble as a kid, like trouble that was, punishment, and also trouble that was just accidents. Like I was pretty accident prone as a kid. Fractured skull, broken wrist.
I got it.
Ooh, go ahead.
Ooh, no, you go.
I was gonna say I got in a lot of trouble, but I didn't always get caught. So that's
Is it trouble if you're not caught? Or
well,
you don't face consequences?
it was trouble for me.
Okay.
It could have led to me getting in a lot of trouble by my parents or other figures of authority. Sometimes that happened, sometimes that didn't happen. But I would say it was sort of a recurring theme.
I think there were like phases where I would get into a lot of trouble and experience a lot of consequences and then come out the other side and be like, maybe I'll just be a little bit safer for a while. And then a couple of years later, I'd forget all about it and end up in a bunch of trouble again.
When do you stop being a kid? I got I got into a lot of trouble in the Army.
I
Called me
got
a
in
kid,
trouble.
yeah.
What was that, Kathleen?
Oh, I got in trouble all the time. I had I was the youngest, and both my parents worked full time, and so I figured out how the bus system worked at a really young age because I would like go to my grandma's a lot, and she taught me how to use the bus. And so I mean, from like 8 years old, I'd like ride the bus to Toys R Us. Then like by middle school, I was like riding it to Seattle to like go buy fake designer handbags on the black market.
Just like Little Red Riding Hood on your way to grandma's house.
And then
Wow.
having an older sister who would find out, then she would tell on me. So I never could get away with anything, but I was always doing things I shouldn't have been doing.
See, I also had an older sister, but she wasn't there to sabotage me. She was in some ways an accomplice she was much older, 12 years older, and she helped me get away with certain things.
You're lucky. See, mine was like the perfectionist and like the perfect straight A child, like the prodigy. So
I'm
turning
yeah.
me in.
I'm the older brother, and I would get my brother in a lot of trouble, but then he would turn me in, and I would get all the punishment. So
Yep, that was more, yeah.
Yeah.
My siblings would be like, but Ari, thanks.
I would make up cover stories to like, cover for the trouble we got into, which were completely unnecessary. And like the cover stories are what got my parents suspicious about it. Yeah, Gary and I were just, riding around the lake. And where were you actually?
Nice.
I had an older sister, and she's the one who the cops came one night to explain something to my parents. It never happened to me, but should have. It should have, but it didn't.
yeah, one of our audience members, Temple of the Hut, says as an only child they had to blame it on the dog. So the people had this when you had siblings.
Yeah, there's always something else around.
Yeah,
As in, like, the dog bought this beer.
right. The dog went to Bellevue and bought a designer handbag on the way to grandma's house. My next question is, what's trouble in your life right now? Like
Getting all the chores done, like just day to day, like, oh, I should make my bed. I feel a lot better when I make my bed. I know that's super mundane, but
Well,
it's COVID.
yeah.
I mean, I guess work mistakes,
Yeah.
like trouble, like, oh, yeah, I didn't put a comma where it was supposed to be a period or something.
and the whole sentence became a different thing.
Or like, but it's mostly financial with my jobs.
Oh, well, yeah. That's,
I
That
usually
changed a
catch
lot.
them right away, but sometimes
Yeah.
like, what was this? I'm like, oh God, no.
Oh,
Crows having voice boxes is causing me trouble, and it's also robbing me of sleep, which leads to a whole slew of other interruptions because they start early.
I'm having trouble getting my electronics, my computers especially, to do what they're supposed to do, what they promised they could do so easily, but I can't figure it out.
yes.
Yeah.
Trouble with tech.
Yeah.
Trouble with animals. We've had woman versus nature. We've had man versus technology. Anything else? Here's my question: do any of you actually get in trouble with people that you're
Wait.
willing to admit?
You get to be around people? What is this business?
Right, it's harder.
So I still live with my parents. So like I still like get in trouble with them. Like, you know, was it this morning or yesterday morning? I like pruned the rose bushes, but I didn't do it right. Like, so I got in trouble for that. But then you learn, I guess.
I still have like, I mean, my parents are alive, but I still have like ghost versions of my parents who like live in my head and get mad at me when I do things I shouldn't. So, and they're actually more strict than my real parents like are anymore. So cool. Well, those are all types of trouble. We're gonna hear 6 stories about trouble tonight. So thank you. Thanks for your true stories you brought, and thanks for the stories you're going to make up, improvisers. To start us out, though, Leah has agreed to tell our first true story of the night. So, Leah, I hand the floor to you.
So it was the late 90s. I was a 17-year-old living in Northeast Ohio with my mother. I was kind of in a transition phase between my punk phase and my riot girl phase. So my style was no longer every shade of manic panic hair. It was transitioning into more baby tees from a thrift store that said super dad in glittery letters. One weekend in June, myself and 2 other 17-year-old friends were going to go to Akron to go to a music festival that a friend of ours had organized. But another reason we were going down to Akron was because my friend Jessica had heard about a piercing place that did not card. Now, I was generally regarded as a good kid, despite, my punk meanderings, etc. I got good grades. I wasn't at the time smoking, drinking, or doing drugs. So adults generally left me alone and trusted me with a lot of stuff. And because of that, I could get away with a lot. Now, I had some reservations about going to Akron this weekend because my grandfather, who had been sick for the past 6 years with Alzheimer's, was in the hospital. He had pneumonia, and we weren't quite sure what his prognosis was going to be. But I figured Akron was just about an hour away, so we went ahead down there. So after a brief meeting with my friends Jessica and Sam, we took an hour car ride, giggling all the way down I-95 South as dusk turned to dark, and we rolled up to this piercing place. The place was in a strip mall, sort of nondescript, except for the neon of the signs being hit by the streetlight. It gave it kind of a seedy vibe. Despite that, we went on in and started filling out our paperwork. With some trepidation, I looked for the line that an ID would be collected, but there was none. Instead, there was just a line in which to enter one's birth date. So I tried to play it as cool as possible, and I put my actual birth date, but 2 years prior to the year I was actually born. We all turned in our paperwork, and in the interim between the time we turned in the paperwork and were called back, or we hoped to be called back, my mind was spinning. I thought we were definitely going to get caught. These piercers are going to call the police, let them know we were trying to do something illegal. We were going to get taken to jail. They were going to call our parents, and we were going to lose their trust and never be able to go out again. Not to mention the awkward 1-hour drive north on 95 South with them. And a couple minutes later, one of the piercers came out, strutted up and said, "Leah?" "Yes." "Come on back." So I went back. I was led to a back room where there was a white chair with a bunch of sterile looking equipment on a table. And he had me sit down and stick out my tongue as far as it would go. When I did, he took some forceps and clamped it down, and that surprised me, but ultimately I rationalized that it made sense. My tongue had to be still, it had to be flat. And then he unwrapped from its paper a brand new needle, held my tongue in place with the forceps, and with a pop, all of the blood rushed to my face and endorphins were rushing, and I just concentrated as hard as I could to try to keep my breathing even so as not to give away how freaked out I was. After a few minutes, the piercer replaced the needle with a 14 gauge barbell, wrapped me up, and I was sent back to the waiting room while my two friends got their respective clamps and pops. Sam, her nose, and Jessica, who already had a bunch of piercings, her belly button. When all was done, we made our way back to the car and then to the hotel, sore and triumphant and feeling like bandits that we had actually gotten away with it. The next couple of days at the music festival were fairly run-of-the-mill. There were indoor and outdoor parts, and we got to walk around a bit and enjoy the sun on the June Saturday. I had not anticipated when planning on getting this piercing just how much basic things like eating involved one's tongue, so I was very cranky. The DIY spirit of the music festival had people making huge pots of food, including some of my favorites like pasta, and I just couldn't have it because it hurt too much. Some punks took mercy on me and shared some of their vegan pudding cups from their stash, and that at least got me through. But ultimately, I was relieved when Sunday rolled around and it was time to head back, because then I would have access to more things. So the drive up I-77 North was, again, fairly uneventful. I-77, it was kind of a typical Rust Belt highway. There wasn't much in the way of natural beauty, but there was the gray of the road, and to the right, there were some short trees. Everything in the Midwest is a lot shorter, as you might imagine. There were brick walls on some spots separating the highway from where people actually lived, and the sun was nice and shiny. The sky was blue. So we were making our way back, uneventful, until about halfway through. A car full of guys, we noticed, were to the right of us. There were three of them, there were three of us, and by Northeast Ohio standards, they were good looking enough. So the three girls decided to flirt a little. You know, we'd wave, make eye contact, smile here and there. And, you know, the boys were aloof, but that was to be expected of boys our age around then. So they seemed engaged enough and we were amused, so we kept doing it. And after a couple of minutes, the driver, after having made eye contact with me, raised his left arm. And what I saw, when I saw the sun glint off of something silver, it took my brain a minute to reconcile exactly what I was looking at. I thought, that has to be a toy. It can't be a real pistol. And time just kind of slowed and extended. And while the scenery became somewhat of a two-dimensional drawing, a child's scribble of gray for the road, a scribble of blue for the sky, the visceral relationship between our interaction, me and the other driver, became amplified. And again, I could feel the blood rushing through my body and the endorphins rushing through my body. And despite this, my body took over and I slammed on the brakes. And when I did, the other driver applied their brakes. And for the next, what felt like 3 days, but ultimately were probably about 2 minutes, we played a cat and mouse game. Me as the driver, trying to get as much distance between the other car and myself, and the driver of the other car trying to make themselves parallel. I felt what I could only imagine a gazelle would have felt like when they're being pursued by a cheetah. So based on the distance, we must only have been driving for about 2 minutes when we passed the next exit, and at the last second, the driver of the other car made a hard right and turned up the off-ramp. The girls in the car were silent. In fact, I'm not sure we said another word the entire rest of the way home. So I dropped off Jessica and I dropped off Sam and made my way back home to my house. When I got in, my mother was in her pristine living room, sitting on her pristine white sofa. Like a doll in a dollhouse, her eyes were kind of glazed over, and a feeling of dread entered the pit of my stomach. I thought, oh no. Somebody called her from the piercing place, and she knew that I had a piercing. And traffic cameras had caught our interaction on the highway. They knew we had a gun pulled on us. They knew we had engaged these guys, so we must have deserved it. And I was going to lose all of the privileges that my maturity and my reputation had earned me with her. She said, Leah, please sit down. So I did and braced myself, and she said, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but your grandfather passed away yesterday. This was crushing news to me because my grandfather, he was my buddy. He was the guy who taught me how to play checkers when my grandmother made fruit salad men for each of us. And as crushed as I was and as delicate as I knew the situation was, because her father had just died, I saw an opportunity. I said, well, I guess you can't really get mad at me for this right now, so I got my tongue pierced. She told me she wasn't happy, but at the same time, she just didn't have the energy to deal with that right now, and I did not lose my privileges with her, which proved that in Northeast Ohio in the late 90s, it was easier to get an illegal body modification than it was to get, say, wine coolers from the Sunoco. And to this day, I still haven't told her about the gun.
All right, Leah. Thank you for that story. Thank you, Jason. But we lost your nice little transition music. I was into it. So, we've arrived at that point of the show where we're gonna hear our first improvised story. So, thank you, Leah, for that. Ari and Greg, I am going to bring both of you out. And here's the challenge for your story. I want you to tell us a story as if you're being independently in separate rooms interviewed by some sort of interrogator or authority figure. And you're going to tell us the same story, but you might mix it up a little bit to try to get the other person in more trouble. All right. So that's your challenge. So take it away.
Look, I already told you everything. All right. We started off. We were just out on a date. I mean, I had the nerve to finally ask her out, and she accepted, and we were out on a date.
Look, it was going really well, as well as dates typically can when you start at a pizza parlor. You walk in, you see all the pizza laid out there on the buffet table, and then you see him just waiting in the booth, and it was a good start. That's how that sort of stuff starts. It's just how it starts.
She attacked that buffet like she'd never eaten before. I mean, she was stacking pizza on her plate like 10 high, and the manager was kind of giving me the stink eye like it was my problem, that she was doing all that. And I'm like, it's a buffet, so it's fine. She can eat as much pizza as she wants. I mean, I was thinking that. I wasn't saying it because I'm not a troublemaker, despite what you might think. And she goes back to the table and she's got 10 pieces of pizza and a salad on one plate.
So, I obey the buffet rules, and I just have a couple slices of pizza, and we're just getting the stink eye from this manager, like all the way across all the booths and all the tables, those ones where you can still see like the dirty plates all stacked up. This manager, instead of cleaning the plates on the table, is looking at, just a few pieces of pizza. Like, I'm on a date. I'm going to have some restraint.
So I go to the buffet and I get my 2 slices of pizza and a little bit of salad, and I come back and there's only 1 piece of pizza left on her plate. That's when I saw her backpack.
I think it's really important when you're on a date to make sure that if you go on a hike later or something like that, that you're prepared. So I just waited until the manager turned his back, and then I just slipped the little slices into, like I grabbed a bunch of those paper napkins and I just slipped it right into my backpack. It was simple, easy peasy.
I understand the rules of buffet. Buffet means all you can eat while you're at the restaurant, not all you can eat today, tomorrow, and possibly the next day if you got a big freezer, So I'm kind of like looking at her like, you're going to get us in trouble with the manager, because I know this guy. Like, he's strict. He's banned my friends from the buffet because they had too many olives on their salad. And here she is stuffing pizza into her backpack. And then she like has this cider ranch dressing that she starts to like, just kind of pour into one of the pockets of her backpack. And I'm like, I'm out of here.
Terry's just like, all of a sudden, for no reason whatsoever, he just stands up and he looks at me, and then he looks at the manager, and then he looks back at me, and he just said the rudest thing I have ever heard a person say in my life to me on a date.
So I called her out. I said, "You're a buffet snatcher."
Like,
that's what she is. She's a buffet snatcher. It's like a grab and go.
Who calls someone a buffet snatcher on a date? Not me. I'll say, good job. Way to think forward. So something had to be done. I mean, at that point, I'm not just going to take it. I'm not just going to be called a buffet snatcher in the middle of a pizza buffet on a date.
So she gets up and she stands up on the table and she like opens up her backpack and starts throwing pizza at me. Like slice of pizza. She's like, here. And like, that is a perfectly normal reaction for a person to have when they're being insulted on a date. So I'm just having a normal reaction. So I don't understand why exactly he decided to call you here for this moment, because this is a private moment between Terry and I about his ability to speak to me politely on a date. Assault is assault. I mean, you can assault someone by hitting them with your fist. You can assault someone by tackling them in a restaurant. You can assault someone by throwing pizza and ranch dressing at them. And no matter what it is, I was being assaulted. So yeah, I dialed 911.
I think that there's just, I was just having a moment. This was just a reaction. And I guess what I'm really trying to get across is everything I did up to this point is perfectly normal. And what Terry did was over the line.
Look, I don't stand for lawbreakers or rule breakers. I like to go to this buffet. I like businesses to succeed, and to have someone stealing from the buffet is just, it's too much for me. And I'm going to call that out. I want to be a good citizen and a good buffet visitor. Well,
I just want to ask you now here. Is 10 pieces of pizza too much at a buffet? Because I think you should really count too much if it's a whole couple of pizzas. So I think we should just also bear that in mind.
So I'm looking forward to the second date, because I think that one's going to be great. We're going to a place where you just have to order from the menu.
I mean, it's going to be spicy.
Can I go?
All right. Well, thank you. That was our first improvised story of the night. That was Ari and Greg, storytellers, true storytellers. I'm going to bring you out. Thank you, Greg.
That was
and Ari.
true, 100%.
So I'm
going to bring out Leah, Kathleen, and Rich to judge this story on your categories 1 through 5. So Leah, based on the challenge, did they meet the challenge?
Well, I think Greg was more aggressive in trying to sabotage Ari than Ari Greg. So I'm going to give this a solid 3.
3. All right. Let's see. Let me write that down. And Kathleen, you're the story judge. So how's the story?
I liked it. I give it a 3.
A 3. And Rich, you're there. You're judging the theme. Was the theme about big trouble?
Not as big as I was hoping for, actually. But I was encouraged as it went along and got into assault charges or something, but then they got a second date. I don't think the consequences for either one of them were that big, so I'm only going to give it a 2.
A 2. All right. I don't know. In my experience, relationships have probably been more trouble than the police, but all right. So great. Well, that is like that was a great middle of the road improvised story. They're making it up. So nice first story. Thank you for that. We're now going to go back to a true story. I mean, that might have been true, but a true story from Kathleen. So thank you, Kathleen.
Right. I just want to shout out to Leah, like good move on when to drop the truth bomb. All right. So this is my story about how I got banned from a mall for a year. So it was a really nice day, and it was the day I was moving out of a room I was renting at a friend's condo in Seattle. And my best friend Luke came to help me with the final boxes of stuff. And I'm a theater girl. I've done theater since I was 6 years old. So these boxes are filled with props, boas, wigs, hats, costume stuff, weird knickknacks, etc., etc. Luke is my best friend, like I said, and I met him when I was 8 years old at the theater, at Bellevue Community Theater. And from the moment we met, we were inseparable. He is my twin. He looks like me. He's tiny, freckly, brown hair, brown eyes. He loves fashion. He's the funniest and most fun person I know, and has just always been, and to this day is my partner in crime. So anyway, we have these boxes. We finish loading my red Toyota hatchback, and I get a call from my mom. And my mom is like the typical Irish Catholic mom. She's overly giving. She's extremely polite and conservative. She's super strict, high moral code. She was raised by Marines. She's fashionable, extremely hardworking, and she loves Luke like another son. And she calls me that day and she says, "Hey, do you and Luke want to meet me for lunch?" And we say yes. It was our weekly tradition anyway. We would go to the Bellevue Square Nordstrom and have Nordstrom Cafe, where I would get tomato bisque, Luke would get the tuna sandwich, and my mom would have her Caesar salad. And this was a tradition. And this was like 2012. She was at the time working at Lincoln Towers at Eddie Bauer Corporate, and her whole team had been laid off during the recession. So she was working like 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So it was really important for her to see us during the week because we were fun and kind of helped like alleviate some stress. And so me and Luke say, of course, can't wait. We'll see you around 1:30. We just have one more errand to run. Our errand was stopping at our weed dealer Slim's house. And this was before weed was legal. So you couldn't just go into a shop and buy weed. You had to have a weed dealer. And Slim was like this 6'7", morbidly obese white man who sold weed and played video games all day. He was your typical like lonely but really nice weed dealer. And he lived in these apartments on the east side. So we left Seattle and headed east. We get to Slim's house and he asked us how much we want, and we both put in $40. We got one bag of weed with $80 worth of weed in it, which back then that's like 4 fingers worth of weed and like a Ziploc baggie. Slim always asks, "Hey, you guys want to smoke a bowl before you leave?" And we were like, "Oh no, we've got a place to go. We're going to have lunch with my mom." And always that weird, awkward goodbye. Don't really want to hang out, but see you next time. So we say goodbye and we head to Bellevue Square. This is during like Princess of Pop time. Selena Gomez's music is on the radio. It's on mixed CD. And we start to head to the mall blasting Selena Gomez's song, "I Love You Like a Love Song." If you don't know that song, it goes, I love you like a love song, baby. I love you like a love song, baby. And I keep playing it like repeat, repeat, repeat. And we were like, oh, we should just put this on repeat. That's funny, right? So we put it on repeat while we're driving to Bellevue Square. We go park in the parking garage in the back right corner, which is kind of open. And like I said, sunny day. And we park. Luke looks at me and he says, "Should we smoke a bowl before we go in?" And I was like, yes. So we start to smoke some weed. And by this point, it's like 1:15 and we're smoking, and you know how like weed can get where you time stops and you get into the vibe, and we have kind of this trance of I love you like a love song playing. And we have this great idea to do like a photo shoot with all these props that are in like the back seats of my car. So we start pulling them out, putting on boas. There's old theater sports signs. There are wigs, like I said, and we are kind of playing dress up, taking pictures. Eventually, my prop gun ends up in the pictures, and the car is full of smoke. Eventually, somebody pulls up next to us and pulls away. We don't think about it. And the world doesn't exist at this point. We are in the zone, having a good time, when all of a sudden we hear boom, boom, boom on the window, on my window. I look over. I say, oh shit, it's the police. I look in my rear view window. We are surrounded by police and police cars. I look over at Luke. At his window, there is a cop with the barrel of the gun pointed at his head. That cop yells, drop your weapon. So Luke drops the weapon. He yells, it's fake. The cops yell, get out of the car. We get out of the car. I can see that on the second level of the parking garage, there are cops on the second level. There is a sniper right at us. Luke smacks his head trying to get out of the car fast. They yell, get down on the ground, hands apart. We get down, hands on the ground, arms apart. The cops go into my car and they pull out the gun. They say, it is fake. And the tension in the air breaks. All the cops are like, oh, they're kind of like let down about it. So the cop by me says, what the hell do you think you're doing? And I say, we're just hipsters. We were just having a photo shoot. And the cops say, get off the ground. And we get off the ground and they start interrogating us. Like, who are you? Let me have your ID. They start searching my car. They start taking pictures. They pull out the giant bag of weed. They take pictures of that. They're in my center console, and they turn off the car. So I Love You Like a Love Song is no longer playing. And keep in mind, we are still high as shit. And so we are terrified. I mean, if you've been afraid before, we are like very, very afraid. And they ask us more questions like, what school you go to? Why are we here? I said, we're here to have lunch with my mom. My heart is pumping so fast. They were like, you know, if you had pointed that weapon at us, we would have shot you. And they're just like in our faces and we're just like freaking out. Eventually I go, so are we getting arrested? Are we going to jail? And like literally thinking about, oh my God, my mom's gonna be so disappointed. She's gonna feel so ashamed. I feel so guilty. Like, oh my God. And the cop just looks at us and he looks at our IDs and he looks at us and the cops go, no, but there are gonna be repercussions. And like overstrut these two mall security guards. And the cops look at them and are like, you got this from here? And they're like, oh yeah. Like me and Luke are like, what's happening? Like, what's going on? They start taking pictures of my license plate. They start writing stuff down and getting our info from the police. And they're like, we need to take your pictures. And like Luke looks at me and I look at him and we're like, oh my God, we're getting like mug shots. And we were like, why do you need our pictures? And they're like, because you're being banned from Bellevue Square for a year. And like, we're like, my whole life flashes before my eyes because weekly lunches with my mom, Christmas pictures with my family. I'm like, oh my God, I can't get banned from this mall. And I look at Luke and Luke goes, oh my God, this is my first mugshot. And this is like 2012. So this is peak like celebrities getting DUIs and things. So he goes, I'm going to do the Vanessa Hudgens face, which looks like this. And I go, okay, and I'll do the Paris Hilton face, which looks like this. So they take our pictures. They won't let us see them. Next, they tell us we have to get off the property immediately. So we go back to my car, and as we're about to get in the car, one of them says, you know, you could have gotten away with this at South Center, but not here. And me and Luke looked at each other like, ugh, what a biatch. But we're still terrified, and there are still cop cars, and we are still high, and they know we have drugs on us, and now we have to drive away. So we get into the car, and I start crying because I'm like, Luke, they're setting us up. I'm going to get a DUI, and I'm going to go to jail. And he's like, you're fine, but but if I were you, I'd be freaking out too. And I was like, that doesn't make me feel better. So I keep crying and I start driving slowly away, and the cop cars follow us. They follow us left out, they follow us right out onto 8th Street, and they follow us for a few blocks. Eventually they leave us alone. When they do, we pull over, turn off the car, we look at each other, and we just are like, oh my God, what just happened? I look at my phone and I have tons of missed calls and texts from my mom. She's like, where are you? My lunch is almost done. Are you okay? Da, 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 da. I text her and I was like, oh, hey, sorry, we got caught up with something. Me and Luke just keep looking at each other, like breathing. We start to calm down. And then Luke turns at me and he says, do you want to smoke a bowl? I was like, yes, please. And so that's the story of how I got banned from a mall for a year. And you're probably wondering, does that mean we didn't go? And we didn't go for months because we were very afraid, but there did come times where I had to go with my family to the mall. So I would just put on disguises for my costume boxes. And the prop gun disappeared. So I think the cops actually took it with them when that happened. I don't even know if they can do that, but they did. And
And Kathleen is right. You can get away with that at South Center Mall. So maybe they should hire you to do advertisements for South Center Mall. Thank you for that story, which I 100% believe, having known you back then. So, thank you. And also, I want to say, since the chat room was talking about things to put on your dating profile, I think typical lonely but nice drug dealer should be a good dating profile addition for anyone who wants it. So, a team remains Big Trouble, and we're going to bring out 2 more improvisers now to try to live up to that. Let's bring out Greg and Liz. And I think this is the challenge I want from the 2 of you is I want you to tell us a story about Big Trouble. Be any story, we'll find out. You're delivering this story to an audience, and there's big trouble happening into the audience, but you're not allowed to talk about it. So you've got to just soldier on with this story while bigger and bigger trouble happens in the audience. Sound good?
Sure.
Sounds
All
good.
right. Good luck.
We're here to talk about seatbelt use today. I'm Phil, and this is my partner Susan. And everyone should know that you need to wear a seatbelt, and we both have seatbelt stories that we want to share.
Yeah, and these are not your typical seatbelt stories. I mean, these are going to really make you think twice about ever not having your seatbelt on again. Okay, so these are true things that happen, and I don't even like to talk about it. You know, I don't like to talk about it, but we both feel like this is a really important cause, because that's why we come out to shows like this.
When I was 14 years old, I was riding in the passenger seat of a car without a seatbelt, and we got into just a little fender bender, and I was propelled forward and hit my head on the windshield pretty good, and there's a scar right here.
You can see it if you look real close. You can't really see it in these lights, but it's there.
It really is. It's right there. And Susan has a similar story about wearing a seatbelt, don't you, Susan?
Sure do. I sure do. Oh, sorry. I get a little flustered when I tell this story, but yeah, I too was not wearing a seatbelt, and I was actually in the back middle seat, not wearing a seatbelt, because it's hard to get that one on.
It sure is.
You don't know where to put it, stuff down in a crevice somewhere, and sure enough, there was a slam on the brakes, and
My brother was riding in a similar position in the back seat of a car in that same middle spot, and they got into a little rollover crash going about 75 miles an hour, and he was tossed around both of his elbows.
Oh, we stopped short, and I went forward, and I hit my nose on the rear view mirror. Not my nose. I hit like my corner of my eye. I don't have a scar, but it hurt.
Yeah. So now we get in the car, we definitely, both of us have airbags
Uh-huh.
on both sides. And we actually, on the way over here, got into a little fender bender and both airbags deployed. and I'll tell you, it stung a little bit, but that's far better than what could have happened without a seatbelt or an airbag.
Yeah, so everyone just remember to do it. Don't forget. This is really an important thing that we did. I was driving a Toyota Tercel.
Yes, 1992.
Uh-huh.
Well, as a matter of fact,
The best year.
you can see it out there in the parking lot with the airbags now deflated. If you still want to look at it, little side note to the whole thing we're doing here tonight.
We have an app you can download for your phone where you can see what you would look like with a little star.
That's right, you can. It's like a little filter. It's like a scar filter, and it's really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, so just don't make the same mistake we made, okay? Everybody just stay cool.
Buckle up.
All right, thank you. That was the challenge. The challenge was to tell a story as though bigger trouble's happening in your audience. So thank you for that. Storytellers, Leah, Kathleen, and Rich. Leah, you're judging the challenge, which was to react as if bigger and bigger trouble was happening. 1 through 5.
The vibe I got for this story was more that they were telling it to somebody who had broccoli in their teeth and they weren't trying to let on that they knew. Whereas, I was going for more a fight had broken out or the place was being raided. So I'm going to give this one a 2.
Ooh, all right, you in bigger trouble. Kathleen, you're judging the story.
Yeah, I agree. I needed more trouble, so I'll give it a 3.
A 3. And Rich, the theme of the stories themselves is big trouble.
Yeah, the trouble was big, but the consequences really didn't go too far, but maybe a little farther than the last ones. I'll give this one a 3.
3. So tough crowd for
Yeah, we are.
for trouble. Like we want stuff that lives up to it. Awesome. We have 2 more stories coming up. But before I do that, I want to mention we are in improv theater. And we do classes all the time. We teach improv. And my co-director for the show, Kent Whipple, teaches a story on telling personal stories. So, and that I believe the next one starts in March. So it's about time you could sign up for that. I'm going to ask Funny Godmother, hopefully, to post a link to either our school page or maybe that class in the chat. But you can search for it as unexpectedproductions.org. You can go to our school page and find all of our classes online right there because stories are great and you can learn to tell yours. So thank you so much. It's time for our final of the true stories. And Rich, I believe it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So, in the 70s, when I first came to Seattle, I actually got the idea that I might be able to make a living as an actor. And I was encouraged because I eventually got a really good job, 3 days on a what we called an industrial or corporate video. I don't know, something about selling real estate or something, but 3 days of work as a principal actor on a shoot at a studio that no longer exists. It was in South Lake Union near where the Whole Foods is, but it's gone now. And the first day was a few $100s a day. I mean, almost $1,000. And the first day I didn't even have to work in the afternoon. At lunch, they let me go for the day. And I was feeling great. They liked what I'd done. And I was walking up Denny to get to my bus to go home. And a car pulls up beside me. And a nice little old lady rolls down the window and asks for directions to a hotel. I knew where it was on the other side of Aurora from where we were. And I started to explain to her. And the car behind her lays on the horn. Beep, and Denny is 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, and traffic was light. So I ignored the guy, and I went on to explain. She was apologizing because she and her husband from British Columbia, and they were lost. And I explaining to her how to get to this hotel, and the car blasts its horn again. So I stand up and I reach back with I signal to the guy, go around. And then I finish, and the lady says, thank you. And she drives off, and I continue walking up the hill there on the the south edge of Denny Park. I get about halfway up the hill and I realize I'm in big trouble, because directly in front of me is a fit young guy, looks like a small version of Bruce Willis, and he doesn't want to let me pass. I left out an important fact earlier. When I signaled to him to go around earlier, really only one finger of my hand was fully extended, and he wants me to repeat that gesture so that he can hit me. And I tell him I'm not going to do that. No, I just want to go. And I step to the side. He steps with me. He's going to block my way. So I start explaining to him that this sweet couple from British Columbia are just lost and needed help. And I was just trying to help. He spat in my face. Now, that's never happened to me before. I must have thought it was remarkable, because I remarked, I said, you just spat in my, he did it again. And then something else happened to me for the first time in my adult life. I hit him with my open hand on right upside the head. And I was standing there astonished. I just hit a guy. And I watch him bend over and pick up his glasses and put them on and look at me and say, just remember, you swung first. Pow! Now, I know they call that a sucker punch, and I know why now, because, well, look, several things happened very quickly, almost within a second or so, and it's going to take me longer to explain them to you. First, you heard the expression to see stars? That's what I saw. It's like the whole universe is a black computer screen with little pixels of light exploding here and there. Now, he hit me pretty hard, but he didn't knock me over. I'm over kind of leaning to my left. And as my vision sort of came back, I could see my left hand again, the fingers. And I could sort of imagine the comic book character Wolverine. I didn't know who he was, but I could sort of imagine him as I could see long metallic claws emerging from my fingers, and in my heart was this lust. I wanted to just use those claws to rip the guts out of this guy. But by the time I stood up, two really good things had happened, for which I'm very grateful. Perhaps it was the taste of blood, I don't know, but the first thing is I remembered that I was an actor. And I had that most precious thing that any American actor can have. I had a paying job and 2 more days of work. And if I fought this guy, he would probably beat the crap out of me. And even if I won, I was going to be messed up and unable to. And I needed that money. That's one. The second thing I was grateful for was Vacation Bible School. When I was a kid, I grew up in a family that didn't really go to church, but most of the kids in the neighborhood did. And in the summer, their churches would have these vacation Bible schools, and the other kids would see me as a potential recruit. And so I got a lot of invitations. The summer I turned 9, I went to 4 vacation Bible schools, the Methodists, the Quakers, the Congregationalists, and the Baptists. And by the time I got to the Baptists, I won the prize for memorizing the most Bible verses. But of course, it was not fair at all. I had 3 weeks head start. Anyway, I was grateful to those Christians for what they tried to teach me, because I said to that guy, you want to try the other side? And I think that disarmed him. He didn't expect that, because all he could say was what he'd said before. Just remember, you swung first. And then he turned and walked up the hill on the sidewalk. And I found myself walking behind him. That's where I was headed, about 10 feet behind him. And when he got to Dexter, he turned right. And for some reason, I turned right with him. And the first car parked there was this blue Camaro. He walks around to the driver's side and looks up and sees me following him for the first time. And I'm standing there at the back of his car, and he doesn't do anything, doesn't say anything. So I said, is this your car? He doesn't say anything. So I called out the license plate number out loud, AWH 1546. He doesn't say anything. So I said, you'll be hearing from me. And I turn and I walk away, and he didn't follow. And somehow I didn't expect him to. I knew it was over. Now, I've thought a lot about this, about how to end this story. And a couple of my favorite choices are, one, I take a large nail and a hammer, and I go to this guy's house, and I puncture all 4 tires on that blue Camaro. That's one possibility. The second that I've thought of is I get this large nail and hammer, and I go to his house, and he sees me messing around his car and comes out, and we talk and realize that we're both acting like stupid adolescents and apologize to each other. I have reason to like both of those endings, but they're not the truth. The truth is, when I got home, I had forgotten the guy's license number. What I gave you was my license number. Now my Prius parked out there on the sidewalk, or no, on the curb or whatever. But there's a good news. That coppery taste of blood was from a cut inside my mouth. The outside of my face was not messed up. My lip didn't even swell. I was okay to work for 2 more days. I did. They liked what I got, the money. In fact, I went on and made my living as an actor in this town for 15 years after that. And then something interesting happened. The Soviet Union ended, and I had a chance to go over there and teach English for a year. I thought that'd be a great adventure. And I kind of got into it, and I just retired from that a few years ago. And during that time, but you can take whatever you want from this story, by the way. It's up to you. But during that time, I had a lot of time to think about language acquisition. And I did a little research the other day when I went home, and I realized that this gesture that I used to signal him to go around it means just about the same thing in American Sign Language that it does in nonverbal North American English. In fact, it's meant that, or something like that, for more than 2,000 years. There's evidence that's what it meant in ancient Greece. So my takeaway from this story is that if you're going to start using a language that you don't know very well and just have a few words to use, you're much better off starting with the polite words. And with that, I would like to say, Rahmat, Tashakur, and Bayarlama. That's Uzbek and Tajik and Mongolian for thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich. Thank you for the story. We're down to our final story of the night, our final story of Big Trouble. It's gonna be an improvised story. And I just want to observe that so far, people have gotten in far more trouble in our true stories than our made-up improviser stories. So take from that what you will. But our final improvised story, Liz and Ari, I'm going to bring you out here. And here's our final challenge. We're going to start a story. It's going to be a transfer story. And one of you is going to start just full of righteous anger. One side of Big Trouble, I think, and the other is going to start just like with guilt and shame. And by the end of the story, you will have switched to the other side of that. Does that make sense? All right, take it away.
I'm just going to say it plainly. When you take keys to another person's car, that's a crime. That's not the worst of the crimes you did, but that's a crime that Sheila did.
Try to be a good person. You know, I try to do what I can. It's just that sometimes I can't resist the feeling like I have to have something, you know, like, and I know I should learn to balance myself. I know I should learn to control my emotions, but you know, sometimes you just really want something and you don't have it and you really want it. And so from time to time, I give in to that urge And sometimes nobody knows, but sometimes I get caught.
I mean, it would have been one thing if it was just keying my brand new Prius. I mean, that would have been one thing. But to key it and then steal it? What could I have possibly done to Sheila to deserve that sort of treatment? That's the question I kept asking myself when I couldn't get to work.
Martha was always an amazing friend, you know, I mean, the kind of friend that you could always call. Like one time I got arrested because of the stealing. I went to Claire's and I took a pair of earrings, and it was one of the first times I ever stole anything. It was from like an actual store, and Martha was there. She got me out, so I didn't have to call my actual mom. And she's always there, you know, and sometimes that's really awesome. I mean, all the time it's really awesome, but sometimes it's just like, I want to be a better person, you know, and I can't figure out how to do it. So I just, you know, keep doing what I'm good at, right? So I just, one day we were out and I forgot my wallet, and, you know, she bought me this scarf, and she didn't have to buy me this scarf, you know, she was just like rubbing it in my face that I'm such an F. I just mess up all the time, okay? And it was just driving me crazy. I didn't even need it, right? So I was just gonna leave it there. And, you know, Martha, perfect Martha, is like, here, I bought you this because, you know, you're such a, just how you are. But she said it really nice, right? But I could feel it in me. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go outside for a few minutes, okay? But I grabbed her keys on the way out because I'm really good at it. You know, it's like something I'm really good at. They were in her pocket. She's so stupid sometimes, just nice and stupid.
I wanted to, you know, sometimes you do things with like the best of intentions, and sometimes they don't, sometimes they don't come up, they don't actually, sometimes you try and do something with the best of intentions, and sometimes it ends up hurting someone that you really care about.
I got outside and I was so mad, and I saw her car sitting there in the sun. She just had it washed because she hasn't washed all the time, and it was perfect. And I just went up to it and I wanted to punch it, and I did. And the key just scraped just a little bit, and, you know, it glinted in the sun. It was just really appealing. So I just dragged it a little bit more, and then it was all I could see.
And that blue scarf, like, it just matched her eyes like so well. But even as I was picking it out and like handing it to her, like I could see in her eyes all of the pain, all of the, like, she knew that there was also a little bit of one-upsmanship intention in there too. It wasn't just that it was her color.
It was my color. And it was all I could see. Like, people see red when they're angry, but all I could see was blue. And I got in the car and I could see the water from the top of the hill. I could see the water. And I was like, I'm going to take this Prius and I'm just going to drive until all I can see is blue. And I just took off down the hill. And I didn't stop.
The thing is like, I do this to her all the time. Like, here, no, I'm buying lunch because my life is together, you know? And
I drove right into the sound. And I'm not sorry.
And the thing is I'm not sorry.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Listen to those bass strings by Jason DeLeo. I like to think he's got an upright bass like hidden off screen that he was playing right there. So, good. You just put it away, right? Oh, dang it. Ruined my illusion. Thank you for that story, Ari and Liz. Leah, Kathleen, and Rich, I'm going to bring you all out for one more score assignment. Leah, did they meet the challenge?
Well, I thought each person's role was very clear at the beginning and very clear at the end, and the transfer was seamless. So 5 out of 5.
5. Well, first 5 of the night. Kathleen, how was the story?
Giving it a 4.
4. Nice. And Rich, did it meet the theme? Was it big trouble?
Well, it got big at the end there when that car went into the sound. So this is probably the biggest trouble I've seen tonight. So I'll give it a 4.
A 4. All right.
Much as
Well-
I hate judging, I'm doing my job.
Yes, excellent. Well, I'm summing up the scores, but I think I already know how this one's going to go. So let's bring everyone out for the end of Big Trouble. We had 3 stories tonight. 2 of them tied. So we had the pizza date, and we had the seatbelt safety. Both came in at 8 points. So good solid stories, but they could not overcome the greatest improvised story of the night, the story we just heard that ended with a car in the lake. So thank you for that Hollywood ending, and thanks for the Big Trouble. Thank all of you though for being part of this, for telling your stories. I keep saying when I planned this show, I was like, I just want to make a show where my friends have to come tell me great stories, because I like all my friends, I like all their stories. So from a selfish point of view, thank you so much for doing this show. For you, the audience, we hope you had a great time. There will be all sorts of stories coming up in the next few weeks. We have a lot of great themes coming up. Music in the Air is coming up soon. I think Loneliness is coming up. Some good ones, some happy ones, some sad ones, some dangerous ones. They'll be this same time, Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific. Wherever you are, of course, you can tune in and watch us. Same place, twitch.tv/unexpected productions. Thank you so much and have a good night.